Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
Hello and welcome. He is Gary McNamara. I'm Eric Harley. As the Friday thing happens.
The
Gary,
thing?
The thing.
The thing.
It's our thing. It's what we do.
We're doing our thing.
We're doing our thing. How's it going?
Not bad.
Yeah?
Hanging in there.
Yeah?
Interesting day again yesterday.
Mm.
As always.
Yeah.
It's we're here on a Friday.
Mm-hmm.
Just see Trudeau put out the message after Canada won last night and whatever it's called, the Four Nations All-Star thing. I didn't see any of it, but and it was like, you're not going to take our game, you're not going to take our country.
Yeah, but you know we could. That's the only point. And you'd be the first to run, Justin. Don't you have some eyebrows to comb or something?
Well, it was an interesting day yesterday. The Democrats really didn't have anything. The only thing was out there was the audio of Jasmine Crockett saying, what would $5,000 do for anybody? It's not going to do anything. It's like when she was asked the question, she was all over the place. But it was an interesting day. Some absolute greatness coming from the administration yesterday. We'll get to that. The Stephen Miller giving the civics lesson. I love it. I'm telling you, he is somebody, and I mentioned this before, I did not like his presentation in the first term for Trump. And I think he's probably one of the best spokespeople right now for him.
Yeah.
The other thing is they did back off on a few things yesterday. They couldn't get anybody in the administration, the press couldn't, to say, yes, Zelinsky, started the war. So they were backing off on that. They went to after Mike Waltz and said, wait a minute, you said the opposite. Well, there's many things I agree with the president, and I agree with him that we need to get peace. It's like okay, you're backing off, which is a smart move. And
I mean, if you didn't say it, that's the only thing you really can say. You can't jump out there and say, well, it's true. Right. You just, there's nowhere to go, really.
Well, it's, you read some of the publications out there, and, you have some conservatives just going absolutely crazy at Trump like right now. Look, he is who he is. You might have been surprised in the first term, but you know who he is. He's going to throw out absolute greatness at times, absolute greatness. And there's more greatness now coming from Trump than there was in the first administration. Yeah, he's much more focused,
and he has a stronger base and a stronger support from his own party.
But you're also always going to get the Trump that throws off stuff that's just BS, and everybody knows it. Now there's a danger there, as I said yesterday, and the danger is because of the Biden administration with the BS that they threw out. The public and independents are particularly sensitive to that, and so are Republicans. And so when you throw out stuff like that, it doesn't help. Charles Cook. There are rumors Trump is working up to 7-dimensional chess.
Well, look, the thing is that everything, if you're talking about like campaign promises, right? You can make a campaign promise, and hyperbole, I won't say has a place there, but you come to expect it. When you're in office, when you're actually in office and you're talking about things about policy and things that you promised or that are on your agenda, and now you've got to do the work, this is where the details come in. When you're on the campaign trail during campaign season, That's one thing. You can say things and people aren't going to really come back at you. But when you're in charge, and whether it's national defense, the economy, when it comes to tariffs, or anything like that, you're going to have to be specific on what you want to do. And I don't know where it goes. We saw the pause button hit with Mexico on tariffs. We saw the pause button hit when, they're going to, look into doing tariffs. And that gives them up to, 6 or 7 months to actually get it done. Well, for those that were on board with the tariffs, fully on board, 100%, you're going to have to, now I think his loyal base is going to be with him regardless. But there has to be some kind of move. On top of that, if you're negotiating with any other country, China's a lot more complicated. China deserves to have tariffs on them. Reciprocal tariffs, absolutely put them in place. We both back that 100%. But if you're looking, I still haven't asked or seen anybody ask him if he's looking to totally scrap USMCA and go back to the table with Canada and Mexico. Are you not happy with that deal that you made in the first term?
If you do put the tariffs on Canada, you have scrapped USMCA on your own.
Well, that's what we were thinking.
Right.
When you impose the tariffs, then USMCA is out the door.
Right.
Well, how do you get back to that? Well, you go back to the table and you make a new deal. And there has to be that agreement. Is it going to be all three? I don't know. You have a separate deal with Canada than you do Mexico? I don't know. I have no idea where it's going. And, you watch the markets. I think the markets are just kind of, playing it day by day because they also don't know.
Well, they were also backing off yesterday in their, and we'll play the audio coming up. They're also backing off. National Economic Council Director Kevin Hazard was talking about the fact, as you said, the question was, President Trump has spoken about replacing the income tax with tariffs revenue. Is that possible? And he said, absolutely. And he said, the tariffs on China, for example, $500 billion to $1 trillion a year, or excuse me, over 10 years. Well, that's $50 to $100 billion. That's nothing.
Right.
It's absolutely not. That doesn't replace. He didn't answer the question that was asked because he couldn't. And then later on, you had the Commerce Secretary say that if we tariff, we can get, and just so the people that criticize, how do you know what the figures are, when we said last week that if you put the 25% tariff on everything coming across the border, that's everything, you'd raise, I think we said $745 billion. And if you did the 10% tariff, but 45% or whatever it is, I think we did 40% on China, you'd raise around $500 billion total.
And the across the board approach would change because the behavior by the consumer would change.
Right, exactly, because you would get fewer dollars if people aren't going to buy those. If the whole point is to buy American, you lose that tax revenue.
Right.
Buy your own argument.
Right.
You lose that tax revenue. But the commissary, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick said $700 billion a year, and the goal would be that $700 billion gets rid of the deficit, and therefore markets would explode and everything would be fine. Well, you didn't answer the question. The question is, would it replace the income tax?
Right.
Nobody would answer that question yesterday because they know it would not raise the revenue of the income tax. It is impossible. And then the other thing was the $5,000 coming back to everybody, and that's based on the fact of, $2 trillion, and even members of Congress just didn't want to deal with that because you're not going to cut $2 trillion off the budget. That's not happening.
Right.
And so it was like, Republicans yesterday were in their own little, let's sit in our own little delusion and talk about the fairy tale stuff that's never going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody wishes to do the numbers on it. The numbers are very easy.
Yeah.
You know, we know exactly how many imports come into the United States. You can figure out if you put a tariff on, as we did, within seconds. And I don't know if you got it, but I criticized, when I brought up the numbers. You don't know the numbers. Yeah, I do know the numbers. And the numbers match almost exactly what the administration said yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
They can't raise the revenue with tariffs.
Mm-hmm.
It's impossible unless you decide that you are going to put 200% tariffs on everything, and then that is just going to, you want a recession, you get a recession on that one, because then the reciprocal tariffs, come in at that particular point.
Exports drop through the floor.
Yeah. And but I was just reading, because it is pretty funny. He said Trump plays 4D chess. Now we haven't got the 4D chess. We got that in the first term. You don't understand. He's playing 3-dimensional chess, and it was 4-dimensional.
Right.
And his thing is now 7-dimensional. Trump plays 4D chess on a lot of different boards. Sometimes, for example, he says tariffs are excellent and wealth generating. The United States should impose them so widely that is able to replace the income tax with them. At other times, he says tariffs are really bad, obviously, and that is why he's not imposing them right now. But that he had to say that they were good for a while to get other countries to do unrelated things that he wanted them to do. That's classic 4D chess, whichever way you look at it. And unless you internalize that and recall it at every juncture, you might end up being confused by his behavior. But again, that's good, though. Look, Trump, the weaponization of government and going after Doge is something that would never happen under any president, and I give him credit for it.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is, and this is because I agree with so much that Trump is doing, but to come out and say, again, Zelinsky caused it, you lose credibility. And then you had Marco Rubio out there yesterday saying, because it's like, remember, the whole thing, President talking about that Ukraine, wouldn't be involved in the decision. Marco Rubio made it clear, no, we talked to him consistently about what the deal's going to be, and he is a part of the actual discussion. So you've got, and it has to drive, and Trump knows it. Trump knows he's saying things that his own people can't back up.
That was a problem in the first term.
Yeah, but he knows it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, obviously, yesterday, if you saw it, obviously, you saw Mike Waltz, who's as close as you can get to the president on national security.
Mm-hmm.
We're about getting the peace. He's not going to repeat the same thing the president's repeating, and that's harmful. And especially with tariffs, when you're playing the game of tariffs, when most Republicans are against tariffs to begin with, and when you're all over the place on it, they're like, what's the purpose of this? And then it's like one day it's harmful, the next day it's going to be great, and it's going to replace the income tax, and then your own people talk about the revenue it would raise, and obviously it's like 1 + 1 = 2. It's easy math to figure out, and nobody in his administration is actually backing him on the numbers as they say they're backing him.
Right.
It's bizarre.
Yeah. Yeah.
But again, it's what you get with Trump. There's a lot of good, and then sometimes there's just stupid.
Well, and on top of that, you wonder what the game is if it's really beyond trade. You look at the move with the short-term move with Colombia. All right. You won't take back your illegal immigrants back to Colombia? Great. Tariffs. Boom. I don't know what the move is with Mexico. I think it's similar. I think it's on illegal immigration. I think it's on the drug trade. I think it's on fentanyl. And
he says that sometimes.
But
and sometimes he says it doesn't
exactly
matter.
Where I was going.
Right.
You have to be clear on your message.
Yeah.
You have to tell the people. I've said this. I've been saying this for months. You have to tell them what you're trying to get. What is your ultimate goal? Well, if you don't want to reveal your hand to your counterpart, then also bluffing over and over again, if you're known for a bluff, eventually your hand does you no good. If they don't believe your bluff. And I don't know. I can't tell you if anyone does or doesn't. Clearly, Colombia believed, whether that was a bluff or not, they believed it. So I don't know how long you can use that. He might be able to use it all 4 years.
Well, again, though,
He could be in the game of saying he could be in the mindset of, I'm going to create an unpredictable nature that everybody knows me for, and that's going to be my game. I have no idea.
But he blinked when he delayed it 7.5 months.
That's what I mean.
Because
if your bluff is no good, then they're not going to believe you eventually.
Right. If you're telling the world we don't care, we'll take the tariffs, and you're telling them I believe it's all positive, well, then you have a negotiating point.
Mm-hmm.
When you say
and you don't delay it,
right, and you don't delay it, then you have a negotiating point.
Right.
When you sit there and say no, we're going to do it, then delay it, and then you admit to the world that I understand that it will hurt the American public, but the pain is worth it, then you deny it, you've lost your negotiating edge at that point.
Right, you've showed your hand.
Right.
Bluffing doesn't come into it anymore.
But like I said, that to me, so much good with Trump, but again, he's Trump. He's not going to change, and it's almost, I'm pretty surprised at, the fury that's coming. We can't believe that. Well, that's the way he is.
Mm-hmm.
That was part of voting for him, knowing that he's going to say things, because the Zelinsky stuff is the stuff that really irked a lot of people because everyone knows it's not true. Why did you say it? You know your administration's going to have to back off on it, and they did yesterday, majorly. And it's like, what good is that?
Yeah, Noah Rothman the other day was asking the question, well, is it that he knows he won't get a deal done, so he's just kind of throwing everything under the bus, and he won't get a deal done with Putin? Is he expecting not to get a deal done? That was the spirit of Noah Rothman's column, and I was like, I don't know. I mean,
but then
nobody knows.
We live in the bubble of today because 2 weeks ago he was going after Putin. Remember?
Right. Mm-hmm.
2 weeks ago he was like, no, well, Putin's going to have to do this because there'll be repercussions, and we can use economic might against Russia. 866-90-RED-I.
This report is brought to you by Shell Rotella. With advanced synthetic technology, is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance. Tires command a lot of attention. As a top expense for drivers and a leading cause of CSA violations, any tire maintenance practice that can help extend tire life is worth consideration. Consider tire balancing, which can set you up for savings and a smoother ride before your tires touch the highway. Tire balancing corrects an uneven distribution of weight in tires and wheel assemblies, but the trick is to be proactive and not reactive. Conduct routine pre- and post-trip tire inspections and pay special attention to inflation. Tires with too little air will wear prematurely and create more resistance, which can result in increased fuel consumption, a harsher ride, and ultimately lead to a blowout.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio, or we are Red Eye Radio. We're not it's. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome. Thanks for being here. Coming up on the bottom of the hour, the greatness of Stephen Miller yesterday. And it's funny because I said this day one when after the president was in office, and I saw Stephen Miller talk, and I went, whoa, is this a new Stephen Miller? Because he's just great right now, and he was not great during the first administration. And so we'll have some of the greatness of him as he lectures the press as to how this country actually works, because it was greatness. My gosh, it was. Yeah, it was so much fun. Kash Patel, FBI director.
Mm-hmm.
That drove Democrats a little bit nuts.
Yeah, it did, didn't it?
Yep. Reading this headline here, Democrats double down on Bidenism. No, they're not going to change.
No.
They're not going to change.
No.
All that and more coming up.
You're listening to Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. All right. There is, we'll always have criticism for everyone. That's going to happen as we talk about so many issues. But there's greatness coming from this administration. First off, I want to say that I think that Marco Rubio and JD Vance are doing a great job. They really are articulating, where the United States stands. But this is Stephen Miller yesterday. This is just great. Telling the mainstream media how the country works. All right, here we go.
It is true that many of the people in this room for 4 years failed to cover the fact that Joe Biden was mentally incompetent and was not running the country. It is also true that many people in this room who have used this talking point that Elon is not elected fail to understand how government works. So I'm glad for the opportunity for a brief civics lesson. A president is elected by the whole American people. He's the only official in the entire government that is elected by the entire nation, right? Judges are appointed, members of Congress are elected at the district or state level, just one man. And the Constitution, Article 2, has a clause known as the vesting clause, and it says the executive power shall be vested in a president, singular. The whole will of democracy is imbued into the elected president. That president then appoints staff to then impose that democratic will onto the government. The threat to democracy, indeed the existential threat to democracy, is the unelected bureaucracy of lifetime tenured civil servants who believe they answer to no one, who believe they can do whatever they want without consequence, who believe they can set their own agenda no matter what Americans vote for. So Americans vote for radical FBI reform, and FBI agents say they don't want to change. Or Americans vote for radical reform on our energy policies, but EPA bureaucrats say they don't want to change. Or Americans vote to end DEI, racist DEI policies, and lawyers at the Department of Justice say they don't want to change. What President Trump is doing is he is removing federal bureaucrats who are defying democracy by failing to implement his lawful orders, which are the will of the whole American people.
Now, I'm laughing. It's greatness. I'm not laughing because I disagree with him. I'm laughing because it's something that you and I said, that you have to go after the people in that room, the White House press corps. You have to go after them and say, here's what you've done. And it is the beauty of how, in my opinion, Stephen Miller has evolved is he has now this incredible, wonderful ability that may be better than anyone I've seen in a long time of completely trolling you while at the same time totally backing up the troll with complete, total, 100% truth.
Yeah, right.
Absolutely 100% truth and credibility behind him, and that is a wonderful asset to have. It really is. And that's why I was laughing during it. The people in this room, love it.
We'll start with a brief civics lesson.
Exactly. Children,
yes,
pay attention now. Let me give you Let me give you a lesson in how the Constitution is set up. You and I have talked about this many times before, about how people will be discussing their opinions, and we realize they have no idea how the Constitution is set up. None.
Right.
They have no idea. None.
Right. Yeah.
And they're arguing, and it's like, well, you don't even know how the country runs. And when we've talked about before, when the polling comes out, and it changes every couple of years, but the polling that has shown in the past that the majority of Americans don't know the three branches of government. Well, if you don't know the three branches of government, you can't comment on anything on the government and criticize the government, what's going on, if you don't even understand how the government works.
Yeah.
Now, I would say that you would think it would be logical that the members of the press do know how the country is set up, but I don't know. I don't know that. I don't know if they were ever taught that in school. I don't know how smart the press is. If you're somebody that's my age, whether you're a liberal or Democrat, you were taught the three branches of government. I don't know if you've got these, young people that are 35 years old that are on the left, whether they've ever been told or explained how the damn country even works.
Well, I mean, in a world where we're wondering if they still teach biology in today's school.
Exactly, yeah.
So are they teaching civics? Are they, was that what you just heard for some in the room, their first civics lesson? You have to ask the question. We've been asking that on and off the air. It's like, do they actually know? I mean, it does not escape me that it's quite possible many in the liberal activist media are clueless. The question is, did they ever learn any of this stuff?
Great article. Great. It's the editorial in the Wall Street Journal. I think it was the lead one. Trump's executive power restoration. His bold order putting independent agencies under White House control echoes the founders, which it does. And just a couple of sentences. In case you haven't noticed, President Trump is trying to assert control over the entire executive branch of government. His latest effort is an executive order published Tuesday that imposes new White House supervision over the so-called independent agencies like the Securities and Exchange Commission. This could be a constitutional watershed. The federal government includes dozens of agencies that are nominally independent of the president, even though they enforce laws and exercise other executive power. This was not part of the original constitutional design. Such agencies took root during the progressive era of the early 20th century. Yes, there's been other progressive eras, folks. Woodrow Wilson, in particular, disliked the Constitution and wanted government by bureaucratic experts shielded from political control. This evolved into today's government alphabet soup of the SEC, FCC, FTC, FEC, CFTC, CFPB, FRRC,
FDIC.
FDIC was the next one.
Was it?
Yes. The Federal Reserve and more. A century of evidence refutes Wilson's premise, and Mr. Trump is now challenging it head on. His argument, echoed by many modern conservative scholars, is that insulation from the presidential authority runs counter to Article 2's command that the president, quote, take care that the laws be faithfully executed, end of quote. If Congress has charged such agencies with enforcing laws, then the president should be able to supervise how they do the job.
Yeah, of course.
As Mr. Trump's order explains, previous administrations have allowed so-called independent regulatory agencies to operate with minimal presidential supervision. These regulatory agencies currently exercise substantial executive authority without sufficient accountability to the president and through him to the American people. No more. His order requires these agencies to submit proposed and final rules to the Office of Information and Regulatory Affairs in the White House, which is part of the Office of Management of Budget, who will review rules to ensure their cost-benefit and legal analysis is rigorous and that they hew to Mr. Trump's priority. His order notably includes the Fed's financial regulation, though not its interest rate or monetary policy functions. So there you go. But it's true.
Yeah.
And this is,
Sure.
as I said, again, we'll criticize when we disagree with the president or when we believe he is not completely accurate. But there's so much greatness coming out of this administration. There really, really is.
Oh, yeah.
And, with Trump, you take the good, which is some of the best good I've ever seen come from a president, with the bad. But the bad, when we look at the tariffs, whatever, as I said before the election, that'll take care of itself. And we see it right now. The checks and balances of economics.
Right.
And so, but the good way outweighs anything that I would consider bad or confusing.
Well, because in the first term, he was still trying to build consensus. And now he's not in building consensus mode. I mean, technically, you always are as a president. You want to build that within your own party. You also want to build that, the backing the political will by the American people on certain moves, especially big moves. But in his first term, it was pulling teeth trying to build consensus in his own party. And he quite often couldn't get that done, which wasn't on him. It was the reluctance of those members of his party at the time. And you're seeing a very different situation. Look, everybody knows JD Vance had some words about Donald Trump years ago. Marco Rubio had words about Donald Trump years ago. All that's over. All that's done. The consensus building, the team building, the cabinet that he has put together. Holy cow. I mean, in terms of political comebacks, they're going to write this book. Our frustration comes in, we want his legacy to be not just about what he did, but about the lasting things that the GOP should feel compelled to carry on years after he is no longer president.
And this is where I'm glad you mentioned that. I want to play just this very quick audio cut. Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House at CPAC. All right, because this is what's necessary. Executive orders are not good enough. Right. Because it can be reversed. Congress has to the Republicans have to do their job. Here it is.
The president is over 300 executive actions already, and we're going to codify so much of what he's doing so that the next team can't unwind it. That's right.
There you go.
Yeah.
CPAC.
Those are the things that we talked about, right? It's the executive moves are a given, and there are things that he needed to act on right away, but ultimately to have a longer-term effect, to keep it from just being undone by the swipe of a pen by a Democrat in the White House, then you need to get that done on Capitol Hill. We've talked about this for a long time, and we talked about this, especially when it comes to energy policy. But there are a number of things there. And, but if I were to ask Speaker Johnson, I'd say, yeah, well, you guys plan to move on tariffs? I know the answer. The answer is no, they're not going to. They're going to leave that on him. But it's, I'm glad he said what he said, because there has to be that understanding. There has to be that understanding that there is a longer-term approach here. It's not impossible to undo what Congress does, and we're hopeful, in fact, the Inflation Reduction Act is something that can be undone. But you still want it to make it more difficult for anyone to undo what you have done. You don't want it just to be about executive orders.
866-90-RED-EYE.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Good morning. Thanks for being here. I didn't see any response. When Trump was holding a press conference on Black History Month and Tiger Woods was up there, I was expecting rage from the left. I haven't seen anything yet.
No, I didn't see anything.
That's something that they normally wouldn't miss.
Yeah.
Because did you see I got mind blank here. The transportation secretary. You see Duffy in California?
Yeah.
We'll play that audio cut coming up. he gets booed. He's talking about, it almost reminded me of when the former governor of New Jersey,
Chris Christie,
was speaking to the firefighters.
Right.
And he was getting booed. He goes, "Why are you booing me? They lied to you. I'm telling you the truth."
Right. We're out of money. Basically, your pensions aren't going to be there. The state is out of money.
And they're booing him because, he wants an audit on all federal money that went for the boondoggle for the train to nowhere.
Right.
And he's getting booed as he's saying, "Go ahead, boo me."
Go ahead.
You should be booing the people that for 16 years have built something that's gone nowhere.
Yeah.
Oh, it's just greatness. We'll have that audio coming up.
Top of the hour news is brought to you by House Products. Visit houseproducts.com.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America, we are Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Good morning. Welcome.
Hi.
I'm telling you, I don't need movies anymore. I don't need Reacher. I saw Reacher started again, and there's I think there's sort of a boycott on Reacher.
Yeah, I don't see myself watching it anymore.
Yeah, he's an idiot.
Yeah,
I can't think of his name.
Was it Alan? Richmond?
Richmond? Richter or something
Richard,
like that. Did you see he went
nowhere near as cool as the late Alan Rickman. Alan Rickman.
You see he went to the same high school at around the same time and knew Gates from high school, knew Matt Gates. He goes, "We don't get along."
Yeah, all right.
They went to Niceville High School, which is where my old radio partner, when I worked in rock radio in Fort Walton Beach, Pensacola, Mark Stone went to.
All right.
The late, great Mark Stone died 29 years of age of testicular cancer. That was brutal. That was a bad time in my life. But, when I saw that, I was like... But you see that that the actor suffers from massive depression. Did you see that?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got like clinical stuff really bad with him. I don't need anything to entertain me. I don't need sports anymore. I don't need anything. All I do is go to X, and it's great. And we have another great Stephen Miller moment. I mean, this is it's great when you can get your entertainment from the job that you work at. Not only do I get a great deal of joy coming in here, but outside of work, when I'm doing work still, the homework we have to do, I'm just laughing.
Yeah.
It's just great. Here he is. Here's Stephen Miller. Here we go. All right. But first, the question asking if President Trump is unhappy about the rate of deportations. Here we go.
There have been reports that Trump is unhappy with the rate of deportations and he wants them to be higher. Is the president happy with the rate of deportations, and are there any plans to speed up the process?
Well, first of all, we all appreciate the encouragement from the media to deport as many illegal aliens as humanly possible. So thank you, and I will promise you that the full might of the Department of Homeland Security, the Department of Justice, the Department of Defense, and every element and instrument of national power will be used to remove, with speed, all criminal illegals from the soil of the United States of America, to enforce final removal orders, and to ensure that this country is for American citizens and those who legally belong in this country. We inherited an ICE that was completely shuttered. We inherited a Department of Homeland Security whose sole mission was to resettle illegal aliens within the United States of America. In 30 days, the president sealed the border shut, declared the cartels to be terrorist organizations, has increased ICE deportations to levels not seen in decades, and we are shortly on the verge of achieving a pace and speed of deportations this country has never before seen.
There you go.
Love it.
Yeah.
It's what I had a family member comment on Levitt too, about the very proactive nature that they've had. And okay, time to school everybody in the room. Time to remind everybody. Because, my gosh, it is light years from the Karine Jean-Pierre thing, isn't it? I mean, that was just so cringe watching it.
Did she get a job?
I don't know. I'm not sure. But, I mean, I'm sure somebody would hire her. I just don't know where that would be. I assume she would end up somewhere at MSNBC or somewhere else. I don't know. But I love the fact that everybody is so proactive. Nobody's hiding from the media. It's quite the opposite. It has been very much in your face. This is how it should be done. Because there's nothing to hide when it comes to your agenda. Nothing at all. You know, the liberal activist media is screaming about Doge not being transparent, while at the same time, Lawrence O'Donnell of MSNBC is literally counting the words that they use while being transparent. And it was in the thousands. And they don't get it. They don't understand. They don't see what they're doing. And quite frankly, if you haven't learned by now and you're at that level, I don't think you have the ability to learn. You're either lying or you can't learn it. And that's the only way you get by if you're in the liberal activist media. Unless you wake up like some did in the past, and Barry Weiss and others are part of that. And they will tell Matt Taibbi, they'll tell the actual story. You know, journalism is, I've said for a long time, and I believe this absolutely, journalism plays a critical, true journalism plays a critical role in a free society. But, of course, we don't have that today, with few exceptions. I love the fact that they're proactive in getting that message out. Their agenda has to, every single day, you've got to tell the story as to what you're doing and why you're doing it. And they don't waste any opportunity. So far, they've hit the mark. We're 4 weeks in running now. And they've hit the mark on everything, including his cabinet picks during their confirmation hearings. It was really seeing the confidence of each of those nominees, was refreshing. Even the ones that I didn't really want to see, in those particular roles, were proven to, at the end of it, say, this is the president's agenda, this is the president's will, and that's what I will be doing. And that is light years from where we were during the first term of Trump. I mean, look at the cabinet that he had before. The cabinet that he had before, all of them were kind of maybe halfway on board with his agenda. Maybe half. I'm being generous. They made it, like liberals often do, made it about themselves. And that's just how it played out. Today, very different. This term is very different. And I love hearing this.
Oh, I mean, it's just he's good. Here's Secretary of Transportation Sean Duffy in California, being booed by the, of course, protesters are showing up. This is just really great. You'll hear the boos in the background. Well, the boos are actually pretty loud, but as he talks about, you're booing me?
Right.
Here we go.
I want to address the protesters for a moment, if I could. I think they were chanting, build the rail. It's been 17 years and $16 billion, and no rail has been built. So if you want to go protest somewhere, if you want to shout at someone, go to the governor's mansion. Go talk to Democrats in the legislature who have brought us this crappy project, right? So we've seen over the course of the last month what DOGE has exposed with regard to fraud, waste, and abuse. And we're done with it. And you know what? You're going to have people who love fraud, who love waste, who love trains to nowhere. But all of us up here, we do not love fraud, waste, and abuse. We are going to use the taxpayer money efficiently and effectively, and this is a boondoggle.
You're always going to be able to find protesters.
Yeah.
Do you think those protesters represent the majority of the people in California when it comes to the wasted money on that project?
No.
Even as Democrat of a state as it is?
No.
Do you think on that one issue that the people of California support Duffy or the protesters?
Nope. No, it's, again, it's the protesters I would say, especially in the Trump era, have started carrying dry erase boards instead of signs. Whatever the moment is, all right, we're just going to get out. We'll protest. It's one of Trump's people. We're going to get out there and shout. We're just going to get out there and shout. And I got to be honest with you. No, I don't think the people of California, by and large, are about wasting money. I don't know how many of those protesters are fully on board for the cause. The causes they're screaming about all the time quite often go back to, it's Donald Trump. It's like, I don't know how many of them are actually dedicated to the actual causes that they're part of. It's like they come up with a new cause because it's Donald Trump, because it's his administration, because it's one of his people, or it's him, or it's his agenda. So, there are so many things that the left has gotten wrong. There are so many things that we're seeing now play out where the reality hits the American people or hits the people of a state like California. I don't know how California survives with the mandates they have in place. I don't know how you go forward, and many people have cast doubt on the viability of such mandates. Newsom's not going to be governor by the time they get around to whatever mandate date you're talking about, whatever deadline you're talking about. He, like a lot of them, is going to promise this big dream, and then he's out. And then you deal with it. And the harsh reality is the economy in a state like that will continue to suffer as a result of the government policy. The cost of government is crushing the people of that state, and it's quite unfortunate because in terms of resources, it's a beautiful state, and it has enormous potential.
Oh, yeah.
Even as big as their economy is now.
Yeah.
It still has much greater potential. They could dwarf everybody with what they have available to them if their government would just get the hell out of the way.
Did you see that video that went viral last weekend? And it was this guy who was impersonating Newsom. And he's really, really good. And the reporter's asking him all these questions. And Newsom's talking with his hands.
Yeah.
And his hands are so active that he ends up slapping the reporter in the face over and over again. And then at one time saying, and then it's just more than talk. And then he starts moving his fingers, and his fingers start moving the lips. Actually, his fingers are touching the lips of the reporter. And it's the funniest darn thing you could possibly imagine. And he's not answering any of the questions, but he ends up just slapping the reporter, backhanding a backhand slap, forehand slap as he's talking because his hands are all over the place.
Oh my gosh, that's funny.
It's really, really good because if you think about it, He's the perfect Seinfeld candidate. He's a candidate about nothing.
Yeah. No, he is. And it's, again, I think it's cringe for a lot of the people who voted for him. The wildfires, the recent wildfires, that entire thing was botched by California leadership across the board. Thank God for the firefighters. Thank God for the people who have to do the work, and it's quite unfortunate that they're not given the resources, even the natural resources that they need to get the job done. Why are we being so stupid? Why are we being so stupid? This entire thing on green energy, this entire thing is a ruse. This entire thing is a scam on the American people. And it crushes an economy. Taxpayer money going to green companies, and over we watch those green companies go out of business. My gosh, if you can't make it with government money coming in, there's a real problem, which tells you they never would have ever been able to even open their doors for a second without the government money. What are we doing? This is stupid. We got to quit being stupid. And I'm hopeful that what we're seeing right now is more and more people waking the hell up, looking around and saying, you know what? We can't do this. Yeah, we all want to breathe cleaner air, although be careful, because remember, the study showed recently that smog actually helped to temper the environment. So smoke them if you got them.
Right, getting rid of particulate matter.
Right, was actually increasing climate change. Wow. But those things that you can measure. That's why I love standing on top of a Class 8 diesel truck. I just stand over the stack. It has to be an older one though. It isn't. This isn't difficult. We know what's going. We can all see this, and we're all either going, yeah, right, yeah, or we're part of the virtue signaling group. I want to save the planet. I want to say you're not a hero. Sorry, you're not a hero, and you're not going to save the planet. How dare you? Go talk to Greta. She'll tell you you're not doing a thing.
I had YouTube on, as I always do when I'm doing show prep, and it just randomly goes to something, and Norm Macdonald came on. Norm Macdonald talking about, he goes, well, I prefer first-hand smoke, because second-hand smoke's been through somebody's body.
Yeah. The brilliance of Norm Macdonald. I love it.
866-90-RED-EYE.
Brought to you by FPPF, Fuel Power Max.
The IFTA tax program redistributes tax revenue to states based on your actual miles run. Thus, the truly cheapest fuel can only be found if you subtract federal and state taxes and state surcharges from the pump price to compare. The strategy means that you buy without regard for whether you are paying more at the pump in taxes. IFTA also considers state surcharges, which complicates the fuel buying strategy. Indiana, Kentucky, and Virginia have per-gallon surcharges. Connecticut, Kentucky, New Mexico, New York, and Oregon have per-mile surcharges. While some owner-operators buy only enough fuel to get through surcharge states, this practice can backfire, depending on the actual cost of the fuel in each state. When comparing fuel prices, always remember, pump pride minus taxes equals the real fuel cost. Owner-Operator Business 101 is provided by Overdrive's Partners in Business program. Go to overdriveonline.com to the Partners in Business section of the website for more detail on this and many other topics.
Brought to you by Shell Rotella. With advanced synthetic technology is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. We have so many great videos coming up. This is from 17 minutes ago. Israel says Hamas will pay the full price for breaching the ceasefire agreement. This comes after Israel accused Hamas of not returning. They say accused. I mean, I think it's been verified now that Hamas did not return the body of that woman hostage. They don't know who it was, but it wasn't her. And then the parading around of the children that they murdered.
Yeah.
They murdered.
It was grotesque.
They murdered children.
And what they put on the coffins.
Yep.
You know,
I mean, it's
arrested October 7th. I mean, it was a slap in the face. They were able to put on this big display for the world.
Yeah.
And then not return somebody, a body of a person they said they were returning.
Yep.
My gosh.
Catch all 5 hours of the show live every night on the Red Eye Radio app. Available in the App Store. Red Eye Radio.
And he is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Good morning. Welcome. Thank you for being here this morning. You want to hear from the opposition, what the opposition is saying?
All right.
All right. This is CNN. All right. This is on HHS issuing new guidance. We brought this up yesterday that there are only 2 sexes. All right. Here's CNN on this. Here we go.
In one of Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s first moves as Secretary of Health and Human Services, the agency has released new guidance that gives a narrower definition of sex than the ones used by most scientists.
What the hell?
Most scientists, unless you're referring to the CDC language that was changed, Health and Human Services language that was changed during the previous administration, which forced them to use that language by most scientists, implying that most scientists believe it. There's the question. The language used is one thing, because we know how the mob works, and we know how a government works when they change the language through the CDC. Trump went through that during his first term, having to change it back from the Obama administration's ridiculous terms in the CDC language. And now we're going through the same thing. Well, most scientists use this language. Yeah, but do they believe it? If that were true, which I really doubt, do they actually believe it? Or are they being forced to use that language as a result of former CDC and Health and Human Services mandates?
Now let's go to that. That was on CNN, which is just most scientists. Then they're not scientists.
Yeah, exactly.
President Trump today emphasized that gravity does exist, even though most scientists disagree with it.
Right. No one has ever been able to clearly identify gravity.
All right. This is Never Trumper Joe Walsh. Here we go.
All right.
The Democrats playing the oldies.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is an oldie. Are you ready?
All right.
Here we go.
Donald Trump is saying everything Vladimir Putin would say. And you mentioned the American people generally don't care about what's going on over there. The American president right now could be a plant, could be a Russian asset. I mean, think about that. Here I am. I know it's early in the morning to say something like that, but think about that. And if the American people don't care about that Putin might have something on Trump, that he's an asset, that he's a plant.
Do we have to go any further?
No.
Been there, done that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like they've got nowhere else to go.
Yeah. Hey, Rosie O'Donnell's on the phone. She wants her stupid argument back. Remember that whole thing?
Yes.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah. Yeah. Insane. Just insane. Yeah. Well, it's again where they have to go. He could be a Russian asset. How do I know you're not? You could be a Russian asset. You know who calls people Russian assets? Russian assets. Just if you're going to make it up while you go along, I'm just going to. You could be a Russian asset. Prove to me you're not. This is their approach. Well, no, if you're making the charge, the burden of proof is always on you. Not for them.
But you tried that once.
Mm-hmm.
It was a lie. It was created by Hillary Clinton using a Russian asset.
Well, did they ever call Biden a Chinese asset?
No.
No.
And you had much more evidence. You had way more evidence of that.
Much bigger reason.
Any with Trump.
Exactly. You can't really deny that. He could be a Russian asset.
And I think that started, I don't know if he decided to jump on that because Chuck Todd mocked for posting a link to the Mueller report insinuating Trump is a Kremlin asset.
Yeah.
This is from the New York Post. Former NBC News host Chuck Todd is being mocked for posting a link to the Mueller report in light of the Trump administration's move to end the war between Russia and Ukraine. Todd, who recently stepped down as host of Meet the Press, took to X on Wednesday to post a link to the American Constitution Society's webpage detailing key findings of the Mueller report. Referencing the Mueller report, Todd wrote, "It was something folks ought to reacquaint themselves with." Glenn Greenwald, a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist and opponent of U.S. support for Ukraine's war, accused Todd of implying that President Trump is a Kremlin asset, playing all the old hits because in desperation, what else do they have?
Yeah, right.
Another commenter, an ex, wrote, "Chuck, are you insinuating he's still a Kremlin agent or just being blackmailed with the P-tape?" The P-tape is a reference to the unsubstantiated claim from the discredited Steele dossier. In fact, the P-tape, from what we know, came from Iggy Danchenko.
Yeah.
By the way, Iggy not, because we're getting close to it, not an Irishman.
Yeah, no.
The document put together by former British spy Christopher Steele alleged during the 2013 visit to Moscow for a Miss Universe pageant, Trump hired prostitutes to perform lewd acts in a hotel room, which Russian intelligence recorded to use as potential blackmail material. That actually came, I think that specific thing, if my memory serves me right, came from the Iggy Danchenko Drunk Fest, when they just wrote stuff down. And as we know, all of that, again, is a lie, and that lie was created by the Hillary campaign, who used I almost said a Democrat national, a Russian national liberal Democrat who used to work for the Brookings Institute to come up with dirt on the president. Yeah. So the only ones that were using Russian assets, the only one where we know the evidence exists, was Hillary Clinton.
Mm-hmm.
Can you believe they're going back to it?
No.
I saw that when I saw the Chuck Todd thing, and then I saw Joe Walsh, the never Trumper, throw that on. I'm like, my God, they really do. They have absolutely nothing right now.
No.
Nothing. And it's interesting because, you had a couple of polls earlier this week that showed the president, above water. Then you had a couple of polls yesterday coming out showing the president underwater. And it was like, this is the worst day for the president. The one I loved was the one poll that showed, Trump down a couple of points, but the Democrats, the Democrats, 22% approval in Congress.
Yeah.
And that's where their power base is. And that's what you want, because what that shows is on the issues, they agree with the Republicans.
Right.
And the president. And that's why we have said for the president, don't say things that your aides can't back a day later. There's no reason to do it.
Because you've got these surrogate team of all surrogate teams right now.
You've got
they're all very capable, and that's
fantastic.
That is something that the GOP has been needing forever, it seems.
Right.
And you have it.
And when you say something that they can't back up a day after, you don't need it.
No.
None of that is necessary to negotiate anything, and it's not seventh dimensional chess. It's just emotionally, he just takes off.
Yeah.
And you notice he doesn't do the same thing on X that he does when he speaks.
Yeah.
You notice it's on Truth Social.
On Truth Social, yeah.
Which eventually ends up on X.
Right.
But he's not the same Trump when he's in person as he is when he's on X.
Right.
Or Truth Social. X-Truth Social, whatever. And that's why we're like, you don't need to do it. You can win every single argument slam dunk.
Right.
You want a negotiating point? Win every argument slam dunk because you can win every argument slam dunk.
Yep. It's, this is something that's the only frustrating part, I think, right now, is everybody is extremely capable and extremely motivated. Don't do anything to slow that entire momentum down, because right now that momentum is peak.
Oh,
I mean, it doesn't get any better. You wake up and you see everything, and every one of them are all visible in your face. Nobody's hiding. Hell, you couldn't find the last president at times.
Well, here's an example of just how on message his surrogates are every single day. This is JD Vance at CPAC talking about Germany. All right, here we go.
Okay.
Germany's entire defense is subsidized by the American taxpayer. There are thousands upon thousands of American troops in Germany today. Do you think that the American taxpayer is going to stand for that if you get thrown in jail in Germany for posting a mean tweet?
It's a great point. Why should America defend you if you're going to throw people in jail and you're going to make it illegal?
Right.
If you're going to say basically free speech doesn't exist and we're going to throw, what are we protecting in Germany?
Right.
It's a solid point.
No, I think it's a great point. Because there has to be an end to, that it's not as clear cut to most people as it was with the fall of communism, right? That was clear cut because an entire generation or two or three had witnessed the rise of communism, had witnessed all of the atrocities of communism. But if we're going to have allies in the game, then there has to be, this is something that I wondered about the other day. Why should we walk on eggshells when we're there? And what are we protecting? Is the great question posed here. What are we protecting when it comes to Germany?
Yeah.
Are you going to change your policies? The people of Germany want to be more free. They want to be able to have free speech, and that includes, yes, mean tweets at times.
Well, when you start putting punishing people for free speech, when it's the government truth that is the be all end all, and if you don't agree with it, you will be fined massively, and as the German politician told 60 Minutes, even be put into jail. This may now open the path to use the Nazi rhetoric legitimately.
Yeah, exactly.
866. It is Germany. 866-90 Red Eye.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. When we talked about Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy being in California, the reason he was there was to talk about the investigation into California high-speed rail and talking about the fact that, hey, we're going to try to claw back $4.3 billion in federal funds.
Right.
And so you had Republicans, by the way, there were Republicans from California that were there. We had played the protesters before. I just wanted to clarify why he was there. We'd played that earlier this hour, I believe, and so just wanted to make sure that we got to that. You can't justify that. You can't justify it.
Nope.
And I said, you could probably ask the majority of California residents, is this California high-speed rail and where it's gone over 17 years, would you view it as a success? And I bet you the majority of people in California, including a significant number of Democrats, would say, what a waste of money this has been.
Yeah. I think so. And again, you get the protesters doing their thing, but the fact of the matter is that the whole waste of money, the whole trimming the fat and looking at things again, you put things in motion. This is how California runs. Put things in motion. Well, they don't make sense. And then everybody agrees they don't make sense. Remember when Governor Brown was signing marijuana laws into law? And he said, now listen, some people are going to have to go to work. We need people to show up at work. Not everybody can be high all the time.
We can't all be high. Somebody has to do something.
Some people are going to have to be, productive. They know, they see things, and it's like, yeah, well, we were moving in this way. The momentum's going this way. We'll just keep doing what we're doing. No. Let's stop being stupid.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America, we are Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
As we get to the end of the week, you look and you say, what arguments did the Democrats win this week? What arguments did the Republicans win? What arguments did they both lose? And it's every single week, it's almost a slam dunk for Republicans.
Yeah.
It really is, because every single argument just gets destroyed. Yeah. It's completely destroyed now. The argument, in fact, with Stephen Miller trolling the mainstream media, I mean, absolutely trolling them, but legitimately doing so with the facts of how the country runs is beautiful stuff. But again, maybe sometimes Americans need a history. When we see in the polls that at times the majority, depending on when they take it, because it changes every couple of years, but when the polls are done, that shows that the majority of Americans, or even 40% of Americans, or 50%, I think one time it was 56%, didn't know what the three branches of government are. That means people are completely clueless as to why the constitutional republic of the United States is different than so many other countries out there.
Mm-hmm.
And so they need the lesson.
Yep.
And so that has just been absolutely destroyed this week. Democrats really can't bring that up anymore, and I haven't seen them try to do that. And that's what you want to do in this administration. And that's why he picked the cabinet and the surrogates that he has to go out there and you destroy every argument.
Yep.
My only advice to the president is don't give the Democrats talking points yourself.
Right. Exactly. It's
that your very competent surrogates that you have hired don't back you the next day on.
Well, and can't back you.
And can't back you, right.
Because your surrogates don't need, apparently, any kind of training or incentive to do what they're doing otherwise.
Right.
So when you put them on the ropes and they can't repeat your message, there's a problem. At that moment, they stop becoming your surrogate, and they start becoming your excuse maker. That's the old game. We've seen that before.
And you don't need to do it. That's the whole problem. You don't need to do it on any issue at all.
You're winning. Keep that going.
Right. And like I said, that would be more on the whole Ukraine thing that, Zelinsky started the war, which was like, that's like, don't, Mr. President, you don't need to sound like a Democrat. Right. You don't need to obviously be telling the world something that everybody knows is not true.
Right.
That your surrogates cannot back you up the next day as they couldn't yesterday.
Look, if you want to go off on the corruption, it's really, if you think about it, that's the first impeachment. Think about that. That was the phone call with Zelinsky where that all started.
Yeah.
And it was about the corruption and everything else. And you should revisit that. Because I don't know that it's over. I don't know that they've tackled that. I'm not the biggest fan of Zelinsky, but the thing is, your focus is to end this war. Your goal is. If it's not your goal, I don't know where you're going. I don't know, what to tell you. Because conservatives don't want to keep pouring money into something that's just going to be an ongoing thing. It could go on for years and years and years, and nothing ever really changes. Well, again, you're going to have to decide what your goal is and then state that, and I believe it is to end the war. And that's fine, but you don't have to throw in any of these items along the way. Our goal is to end the war, bring peace back to Ukraine, and put Russia back to where they're not attacking other countries and trying takeovers. Something you can repeat, which is true, is Putin only tries this when liberals are in office. Crimea, Ukraine. So we're very clear that and very confident that this is not going to sustain, and we're going to put an end to it. That will happen. And just leave it at that.
Right. And again, on tariffs, I have no idea why they're all over the place on it, except the fact that the president has, as we've talked about, Peter Navarro and Lutnick and others that absolutely believe the tariffs work. The president, even though he was so confident a couple of weeks ago, showed his true hand when he said the American public gets hurt by it. We'll get hurt by it, but it'll be worth it. And so I don't whether I can't read what's in his mind, because nobody will ever ask him, even friendly media, could you please tell us, are you for the tariffs or not? Do you believe they hurt the American public? One of the problems that we have said is the reporters don't ask the questions that need to be asked, especially when it comes to presidents and what they believe in economics. And you and I have said it before. Our audience knows much more of what we think on economics than they do any president.
Yep.
Maybe except going back to Reagan, but then again, I don't want to rewrite history, because early in the Reagan administration, he was against the tax cuts that came in. That was Jack Kemp that really, really convinced him of that. So you look and you say, but the fact is, whatever your opinion is on the economy, let it be known. Maybe we actually did know, for example, Obama gave the signals of what he thought about an economy, and he was completely clueless. When he said, for example, remember, you didn't
build that.
Yeah, you didn't build that, that the government built it. Government doesn't build a damn thing.
No. Without the profits, you don't build anything.
Right. Corporate profits and people's profits fund everything.
That's right.
Government doesn't fund anything. They can transfer the money. They can move the money through.
Right. Because his point was, we built the the government built the roads and bridges to your shopping center or whatever.
Right.
Nope. None of that happened without the profits of the private sector. In fact, they did build what they have and built your roads too.
Right. So we know that he did let us know, Obama did, that he was completely clueless. The smartest man in the world has no idea how things run economically.
Right. Yeah.
That's what they used to call him, in case people are like.
Smartest man in the world, smartest man in the room.
Right. Why? Because people that may not have been paying attention, or especially early on with Obama going, why do you keep calling him the smartest guy in the room? Well, we're not. That we're mocking when we say that.
I saw this young person the other day, and they said, I was born in 96. And I'm like, I have so many questions, and I also don't want to ask any of those questions.
And that is, if you look at right now at the end of the week, if you look at the weak spot for the president, it is the tariffs.
Yeah.
That is the one thing where he's way underwater.
You know, what's interesting is that you and I were asking, okay, we know Navarro. We know he's got the pro-tariff team in place. Is there somebody else that has his ear? You know, we thought, okay, the inflation numbers, those inflation numbers, they tell a story, a very clear story that you really can't change, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I wondered, what about corporate CEOs? Quietly making phone calls. He's friends with a number of them. I mean, I don't know how many of them have a direct line to the White House. Maybe I'd be surprised as to how many do, or have at least maybe an indirect line to the White House. And then the story came out that the calls that, your quarterly earnings calls that these companies are making started having a much higher frequency of the words tariffs and trade. And I don't know if somebody brought that attention to his attention or not, but it was a story for a few days in the financial media. And that is a concern. It's why now, clearly, they want to kind of, let's do a study, let's look at tariffs and see what the effect will be instead of implementing tariffs right away. I don't know.
But that's not,
I don't know if that's the one thing.
The point I want to make is at the end of the week, we say we're Democrats winning. Democrats aren't having the argument with the president on that. The administration's arguing with itself.
Mm-hmm.
That's the bizarre thing.
Well, no, Bernie's been saying for years he agrees with Trump on tariffs.
Right.
Yeah. No, he's pro-tariff. Many liberals are.
So it's not really that this is an argument, and so it's not really Democrats are winning the argument.
Right.
The administration, Trump's arguing with himself on the whole tariff thing, which is just it's bizarre in its own way, but it is classic. It is classic Trump. And like I said, you're getting great stuff with Trump, and then you get the normal. What's happening here?
Right.
The other thing is, now that the hockey series is over, let's drop the 51st state. It's not going to happen. You sound silly. You sound stupid. It was great for a week. But when you tell a joke over and over again, there's a time when you should stop telling that joke over and over again.
Now, if we want to attack Greenland from the south, we're going to have to go through Canada. So listen, just tell them to move over.
Right. But again, that's something, that's not an argument they're having. I'm just looking at, for example, people look at it and because one of the things, it's not hard to understand. You sit there and say, Canada's being unfair. Well, you wrote the last trade agreement with them.
Yeah.
You personally approved it. Your administration did it.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're attacking them as if they're the enemy. That's why you look at it. Most Americans are in favor of tariffs on China. On Canada, that's the biggest one. They are not in favor of tariffs with Canada. That's landslide numbers on that. And with Mexico, they are. And so when you're throwing out this 51st state thing, the whole question is, why are you doing that to the closest neighbor that we have, one of the friendliest neighbors we've had for over a century? What's the purpose of it? What are you trying to get out of it? And it's like, stop it. And they're not going to be the 51st state. Stop with the idiocy.
Mm-hmm.
No conservative wants Canada as a 51st state. No Republican should want Canada as a 51st state because you get 2 Democrat senators and a ton. They become, by the time they would become a state, they would be the biggest state if California keeps losing population. They would be the first or second population in state that would have way more Democrat Congress people and senators. So stop the silliness. It's stupidity. Stop it. Move on.
Yeah. Take Greenland.
Exactly.
Do it in the middle of the night.
Take Ukraine.
Exactly.
No, but it's just it's gotten to the point. It's like, this is stupid. Now move on. The hockey game's over. We're done with the hockey.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody in America cares about hockey to begin with.
Yeah.
Except if politics is involved. But the 51st state thing is silly. It's stupid. It was a good joke for a while.
No,
let's move on.
It's excellent trolling.
Right.
But even that kind of grows old. It's time to move on from it.
Yeah, but it's trolling that's used to try to make a wrong point.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can't make the point. Trump made the deal with Canada. If Canada is involved in unfair trade practices, Trump caused it because he made the deal. You can't, that's my point. You can't win the argument. But the thing is, on that, nobody's having the argument with him except himself. They're arguing with themselves on it.
Well, and we're waiting for somebody to ask the question. Are you going to totally scrap USMCA and renegotiate it?
Right.
Because if you do fully impose these tariffs, then that goes outside of USMCA, which is your agreement.
Well, right, you can't do that. I mean, the USMCA is done if that's
right.
the entire point. So what's the purpose of it, and what did you do wrong? These are the questions that come up. What did you do wrong then in agreeing to this that you said was the best trade agreement ever?
Well, and if there are allegations, remember the Trump team was looking into whether or not China was living up to the tariffs that Trump put in place in the first term. Well, I haven't seen anybody officially from the Trump team come out and make that the talking points. You know what I mean? Especially forget about China, because we can have a different discussion about China. But if you're talking about Mexico and Canada, is there a claim, aside from fentanyl, and it really isn't about fentanyl, because you can handle that without a trade war, then what is it outside of USMCA that they did? Is anyone making the point they didn't abide by USMCA? I haven't seen that anywhere.
Well, but that's the interesting thing, because he said it was about fentanyl, then a couple days later said, well, no, it doesn't matter about fentanyl. We're still going to put the tariffs on anyway.
Right.
So that's the fascinating thing about this Trump administration. The Democrats aren't winning one argument with him.
Right.
Where Trump is losing the American public is the argument that he's having between himself.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't make sense to the majority of the American public concerning Canada.
Right.
Because tariffs on China, they look at, they're involved in unfair trade practices.
Right.
And even Mexico, he's underwater on that. Because the whole point is, well, you made the trade agreement with them. You said it was the best ever. Now you're trying to say they're ripping you off. Well, then you're responsible, aren't you? Those are the questions people ask.
Right.
But the Democrats aren't even making that argument. The argument's actually being made by a lot of conservatives saying, what are you doing?
Right.
Why are you causing a problem when there doesn't need to be a problem caused by this?
Right. Yep.
Because if it is true that his numbers are slowly shrinking, that's it. There's no other issue that he's losing on. There isn't one other issue. Every other issue, Trump is winning.
Yeah. Yeah.
Every issue.
Yep.
And you just say, well, what's the purpose of it? Why? I don't have the answer. I don't have the answer.
Yeah, I don't know.
But it's funny because, again, Trump, when you look at the Republican Party and Trump over Democrats, it's a slam dunk. They're winning every single issue. The only one they're not is the one they're having with themselves.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Guess we'll see where it goes.
Yeah.
I mean, it can't go on forever. You got to pull the trigger or not at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And on tariffs, that's been a big deal. You can't sit here and just wait on the sidelines.
Well, if they wait 7.5 months, that's really the intent.
Right.
Which is why I believe Trump wants the but again, the acknowledgement, I think the thing that sort of changed everything is Trump's acknowledgement that tariffs hurt the American public. Because that changes. All of a sudden, you're arguing with yourself.
Right.
866-90-RED-EYE.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Oh, do we have an audio cut coming up from Rand Paul?
All right.
Which I have to ask, does after we play the audio cut coming up following the bottom of the hour, whether he listens to the show. Because you and I were previewing it, and we went,
that sounds familiar.
Sounds familiar. It's exactly what we said on yesterday's show. Exactly to that point. Oh, you see where Rand Paul now says he was wrong. He now endorses Trump.
Yeah, it's, the headlines were post-election endorsement by Rand Paul.
Except?
What?
For what? He mentioned one thing.
What?
He completely endorses the president except for one thing, one issue.
Yeah, which is?
You know what it is.
War?
Tariffs. Tariffs.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I thought there actually are a handful of issues. I mean, I don't know what was mentioned in any given article.
That's
but,
what he said.
Yeah,
that's
right,
and
yeah.
in the I saw the ex post that he put out.
Yeah,
where he goes completely endorse the president, everything's doing, and then he put at the end except tariffs.
Right. Yeah.
But something that he said was just. It's exactly what we had said on yesterday's show. And you saw where George Clooney admits the media dropped the ball on covering Biden and his cognitive state.
Yeah. Speaking of late observations.
Yeah. And this is really interesting because all the other news, this hasn't really got a lot of news. Yesterday, the Indiana State House voted 69-25 to pass a bill that would start discussions to let some Illinois counties secede and join Indiana. You know, you've got those eastern counties in Oregon,
right?
They want
to. They want to become Greater Idaho.
Yes,
and then the rest of Idaho was like, "Wait a minute, we're greater.
You can't just come in and call yourself Greater.
Yeah, you don't get to just do that."
Good, yes. Greater, no.
Right.
Catch all 5 hours of the show live every night on the Red Eye Radio app. Available in the App Store. Red Eye Radio.
And he is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. I didn't know this was even going on, but there's so much news going on. I'm sure this is news in Indiana and Illinois, but it really is fascinating and shows where we are right now in the United States. Wall Street Journal had it. An escape route from Illinois. Indiana takes the first step towards welcoming land of Pritzker counties that want to secede.
Yeah.
Land of Pritzker counties. The plan to give beleaguered Illinois taxpayers an escape route moved a little bit closer to reality. On Thursday, the Indiana State House voted 69-25 to pass a bill that would start discussions to let some Illinois counties secede and join Indiana. The bill, sponsored by Republican House Speaker Todd Huston, would establish the Indiana half of the Indiana-Illinois Boundary Adjustment Commission to discuss letting some Illinois counties make a new home in Indiana. Illinois needs to approve its own bill to join the commission. That's where the problem is. We'd love to have you.
Yeah.
He told the Illinois counties, because you know what? We always think it's better to be growing. If Illinois residents are struggling with the state's 4.95% income tax rate and 9.5% corporate income tax rate, Indiana would like to raise our hand to say we think that we have a heck of a lot to offer you. Wow. And the Wall Street Journal did the side-by-side Indiana and Illinois.
Okay.
The state economic outlook for 2024, Indiana 5th, Illinois 48th. Average effective property tax, 0.77%, Indiana, 2.11%, Illinois. Bankrate.com retirement affordability, Indiana 3rd, Illinois 22nd. Center for Education Reform Parent Power Index, Indiana 3rd, Illinois 44th. Chief Executive Magazine Best and Worst States for Business in 2024, Indiana 6th, Illinois 48th.
Wow.
Let's take a guess who would be beneath Illinois. New York, California. Corporate tax rate, Indiana 4.9%, Illinois 9.5%. Flat individual income tax rate, Indiana 3.05%, Illinois 4.95%. Forbes best states to start a business, Indiana 2nd, Illinois 28th. Population growth from 2010 to 2022, 5.3% increase for Indiana, minus 2% for Illinois. Tax Foundation tax competitiveness, Indiana 10th, Illinois 37th. And then he writes, that will please downstate residents who know their red counties are an afterthought for Springfield, which mostly worries about how to pay off public unions and gerrymander district lines to reduce their relevance in elections. Progressive Chicago gets what it wants from the state capital, but red counties are stuck paying for the disaster of the state's lousy schools, crime, and underfunded pensions. Wow. Then they talk about what Indiana is doing. Illinois Governor Pritzker says the secession plan is a stunt and is not going to happen. But does he hear the stampede? Mr. Pritzker became governor in 2019, and 33 counties have passed advisory referendums since 2020 expressing their desire to ditch the land of Lincoln. In the same time period, more than 364,000 residents have left the state on their own, often for lower tax climates. At least 100,000 people from Illinois have already moved to Indiana in that time period. And I just love this last line it was a short editorial. Mr. Pritzker and Democrats in the legislature, let your people go.
I love it. I love the push from a neighboring state. You know, with the people of Oregon, it was like, hey, we want to leave. And people from Idaho were like, can we talk? But in this case, it's, hey, we'll take your people. Your people. Hey.
I've lived
in the Pritzker Kingdom. You're suffering.
I've lived in Illinois, New York, and Oregon. I mention Oregon because they also want to secede. I mention New York because it's the same thing.
Yeah.
I've been gone now I left Buffalo in 97. And when I left Buffalo, I first went to, I went to Portland at that point, went to Oregon. But I did live 93, 94 in Illinois. And I remember, you get in Illinois, New York, you get the same thing. I'm sure California. I haven't lived in California, but I'm assuming it's the same thing where, you've seen the secession plans of splitting up California.
Yeah.
And that's because when you live in a county outside of New York City, for example, in New York, it's all you hear. There's been a desperation. This thing is, I became a talk show host in 89, but that the mindset that we have no representation because New York controls everything in New York has been there for decades upon decades upon decades.
Yeah.
And we can't get anything that we want because the legislature is controlled by such a huge city.
Right.
Same thing in Illinois, with Chicago being so big, as the Wall Street Journal points out there, people feel as if we don't, it's hopeless because we don't have any representation. It's interesting, Oregon, because Oregon, you look at Oregon going back, was an extremely conservative state. Portland and that area grew, Portland and Salem and Eugene and all that. And all the urban areas, people from California, ton of people from California moved there.
Yeah.
Ton of people from New York moved there.
Right.
And I've often talked about, how much I love Oregon. But I've often talked about that Oregon was extremely unique. I found it very unique because Portland is such a small geographic area of the entire state. But if you get within, I always would say this, it may not be totally accurate, but you get my point. Like within a mile of the city center, it's anarchist communist.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And then it's communist. And then it's then it's socialist, and then it's moderate socialist, and then it's
democratic socialist.
Democratic socialist, right? And then then liberal Republican, then moderate Republican, then conservative Republican. By the time you get 30 miles outside of Portland, it's get out of my face.
Yeah, it's Texas. Yeah,
it's but you get to you get out of Portland, especially if you start going east. You get to places like Hood River, where I had my first hole-in-one, by the way.
Oh.
My first hole-in-one was in Hood River, Oregon. You get Baker City way, but anywhere east, it is it's so incredibly conservative. I mean, they don't have fiscally and culturally, they have nothing in common with the people who run that state. And so it's not that just you don't have anything in common culturally or fiscally. That's a big enough problem. But when you have decades and decades and decades and you say to yourself, it's hopeless, we can't change it.
Right.
We cannot change the system from within because we don't have the representation.
Yeah.
That's when people move, and that's when things like this come up, and that's exactly what's going on in Illinois too. And it's sad because a lot of people, the only thing, a lot of people don't want to move. That's home. It's home. They planted, their ancestors live there. You talk about, you go to Eastern Oregon, you'll hear a lot of stuff like, I'm a native Oregonian. You hear that there.
Yeah.
People talk about it like that. We're native. We're here. This is our land. This is and people that have nothing in common with us are destroying the quality of life and the freedoms that we hold so dear. So we can't change it. We got to go.
Yeah.
And if they don't want to leave, then the next thing they want to do is secede.
Yep.
I mean, it's logical. The one thing that upsets people more than anything, I believe, it's why we have the form of government that we have. It's why we have a bicameral legislature, is the fact of when you don't feel you have any representation anymore. That's the thing that causes civil wars.
Yep. That's the thing that really motivates in the biggest ways.
And so it's disheartening when you see people going through that, because it's really threefold. It's the fact that you have nothing. Your fiscal beliefs are completely different.
Yeah.
Your cultural beliefs are completely different, and you're rowing upstream. You can't get anywhere because you have no representation. And that's the thing that makes you get to that point of saying we need to secede.
Right.
Now, they're not going to allow them to do it. And so people are going to continue to leave. And you and I talked about this a lot, of what's going to happen now that liberalism has been so entrenched in these states. Like, you think of Oregon and you think of California and you think of Illinois and you think of New York. Maybe you can throw in Washington State.
Yeah.
By the way, same thing in Washington. You get outside of Seattle, extremely conservative. People think of New York and they think, they're all liberals. They're not.
Right.
Yeah. You'll find conservatives everywhere in this country, but they're frustrated because they say we can live in a system where everything doesn't go our way, but we can't live in a system where nothing goes our way because we don't have any representation, because the massive population centers control everything, and they're just not liberal. They're whacked out liberal.
Yeah, and if you can't secede, then you leave. You get up and you go. And it's quite unfortunate, but we're seeing that migration happening. We're seeing it for a number of reasons. The cost of government is crushing people in California, has been for quite some time. And I'll tell you, it was the worst optics, I think, since COVID, which wasn't that long ago, for Governor Newsom, the wildfires. The mom getting in his face. Well, I was trying to call the president. I can't get it. Show me your phone. Show me where you were trying to call the president. Oh, man. This is the thing. Reality. We've said you're not going to win this certain issues with parents. You're not going to win against reality. When you're on the left, you can shout, scream, and lie to the end of the planet. You're not going to win because reality doesn't change, and you can't change it.
Yeah. And you and I have talked about what happens now that states, they've been set in their ways for such a long time with the liberalism that they're not going to change, and they don't care whether they lose business.
Right.
They don't care whether the government doesn't provide the services or can provide basic police protection, or we have to throw this in there, water.
Right.
Where prices are skyrocketing, where crime is up, where the business, that business can't succeed, and everybody starts moving out. What happens? When do they change? When do they finally wake up, or don't they wake up?
Right.
When you look at what we talked about, what futurists look at, Texas being by the end of the century 100 million people. There's a reason for that.
Yep.
866-90 Red Eye.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. We'll start out next hour with an audio cut from Rand Paul. You want to hear?
All right.
It's like, wow. Didn't you guys say that yesterday? Yeah, we did.
It sounds familiar.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America and around the world, we are Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Thank you so much for being here this morning. As promised, let's start out with the Rand Paul audio cut.
All right, let's hear it.
Here we go, because it applies to something that we have said this week.
Yes.
Here we go.
Why are the decisions of this body so awful? Because there's a printing press. I had a conversation with one of my Democrat colleagues, and I said, we have to make a choice. You've got to decide whether you want to help the poor in our country or want to help the poor in Ukraine. or help whoever you're paying in Ukraine. And he says we shouldn't have to make a choice. Well, it's like, you do have to make a choice. The fact that you think you don't have to make a choice is why we're $36 trillion in the hole. You have to make choices. Which comes first, Ukraine or America? You can't do both because we don't have enough money. We only have enough taxes coming in to pay for Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and food stamps.
Oh, let's just stop it there. Well, what show has said that numerous times this week before he said it? Exactly those words. Let's continue. Here we go.
Everything else is borrowed. So maybe able-bodied people need to go back to work. Maybe there needs to be a work requirement. Maybe, for goodness sakes, food stamps shouldn't buy sugar drinks, chips, ding-dongs, and Twinkies.
Whoa, Rand Paul. Whoa, slow down. I mean, I don't get food stamps, but...
And that's why we said, can we put the brakes on the $5,000 thing? As a caller said yesterday, we know you guys are against this. No, we're not against returning taxpayer dollars to people. And if you ever could take off $2 trillion, if Doge could succeed in that, they won't. They won't. It's just they're not going to be able to get $2 trillion on it. The American people would be in an uproar if they did, because you'd have to start cutting some benefits from people. And we have to do something, right? You eventually, part of the problem is, and even with the figures the administration put out yesterday, we're roughly $700 billion in the hole every year,
right? And
we had said that yesterday. So you need to make up that $700 billion, but still, at that point, you still have a $6.5 trillion budget. And the interest on the debt isn't going away anytime soon. You're not going to be able to force, because we just went through it and saw what happens. You're not going to be able to force the Fed to artificially keep interest rates to 0.00001%.
It's not going to.
It's not. So you have a problem with $1 trillion in debt.
Yep.
Excuse me, interest on the debt.
Yeah.
And that's just the reality of what you have. That's why we said let's stop with all the excitement that we're all getting back $5,000. Number one, in order to get back that $5,000, you would need. I mean, that was based on $2 trillion being wiped off the budget. And when the caller said yesterday, you guys said you'd be against it, and I agree with you. We went, no. If you can cut $2 trillion off the budget, I would be for the American public getting a significant portion of that back.
Look, we'll be the grand marshals of the wrong parade if they could do it,
Oh, yeah. We said that yesterday.
Yeah.
Right. And the other amount, to go pay off the to pay off the debt. But it's not going to happen. And when we were in the discussion this week a couple of times about it, we said, look, the only thing when we broke it down with the numbers, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and food stamps. Right there, and that's what he didn't give the number, right there, you're at $4 trillion. Before you hit anything else, you're at $4 trillion right there.
Yeah.
And the budget last year was a little over $7 billion, and that's with $7 trillion, and that's with $1 trillion roughly in interest on the debt that has to be paid, which this year is expected to be $1.2 trillion.
Yeah.
And that's the problem that's the challenge that you have, and that's why the tariffs to support the income tax instead of the income tax started falling apart yesterday with the administration. They were claiming they could still do it. Then they did the math and said, well, no, we could hopefully, and the numbers were the same that we came up with last week, I think.
Yeah.
The numbers were the same.
Right about the same.
$700 billion they could raise if you had maximum tariffs, which would be the 25% across the board on everything. We were questioned on our numbers, and we knew we were right because, as we said, we explained it to you precisely how you figure it out. I mean, we know the total number of imports that come into the country, and we even went up a little bit on it. We said $3.5 trillion in imports coming in, and if you have a 25% tariff on everything that comes into the country. And that wouldn't be the case, by the way, because the exceptions would be carved out like crazy.
Yeah,
because now they're trying to protect whatever industry they need to protect politically.
Right.
And, they said, and that would pay off the debt. Or, excuse me, not the debt. That would pay off the deficit.
Mm-hmm.
Not the interest, because the interest is part of the deficit, by the way, but that would pay off the $700 billion in overspending that we're doing, and that would solve the entire problem. No, it wouldn't. It doesn't get rid of the income tax. And that's when I can't think of his name. Bissett yesterday was talking about when he was asked a question, you're going to replace the income tax with the tariffs? He said, yep, because if we do it, we could raise $700 billion. Well, doesn't the budget's $7 trillion.
Right.
So you're saying you could do it, and your math doesn't add up.
Right.
And that's the problem. And Rand Paul just laid it out right there. But the point he made is people don't give a damn when they're spending other people's money.
No, they really don't. They never have. And we've talked about that to no end, really, over the years. It's easy to spend other people's money. And why we let them get away with spending our money in this way is beyond me.
Yeah.
The Doge thing should have been a given years ago. Oh, ages ago.
Well, they talked a good game, didn't they?
Well, they tried.
Played all the audio yesterday.
Yep.
Of Obama.
Never walk the walk.
And Biden.
We'll pretend to be.
And Al Gore.
Fiscally responsible.
And Clinton.
Uh-huh. Yep. And then Clinton goes back to welfare reform. I signed it, but I wish I hadn't.
It's true.
Well, which is it? You know what I mean? It's because it was going with whatever at the time. Didn't matter. Well, now they're doing the deed. Never. What? I can't believe that. Well, you weren't crying when Obama was talking about it. Now, he wasn't going to walk the walk. You probably knew that. You probably, like a lot of things with him, you knew, I know what he really believes. I know what he really wants to do. For a lot of people, we talked about that over, both of his terms, and then we talked about it for ages with Democrats who pretend that they're fiscally responsible. They'll try and pretend they're going to be fiscally responsible. Hell, Kamala Harris pretended she wanted to build a wall. I mean, that's how stupid it's gotten. They don't even know how to pretend anymore, And those, like he said, what you just heard Rand Paul say, you have to make choices. We've got to start choosing the right things. We've got to start insisting that the spirit of Doge and everything behind this of auditing, and it should be a permanent auditing process of every dime that is spent over and over again, because, and we sat back and let it get this far, $36 trillion, and we're at the point where the interest on that debt is over $1 trillion now.
I think there should be rhetoric out there from the administration to promote this, saying, how dare we burden our children, our grandchildren, and our great-grandchildren with what we want today. It's one thing if you want to spend that money yourself and it's your money. To take money that we don't have, that we're putting the burden on future generations, is the most evil thing we've done as a society.
Mm-hmm.
It is. Domestically, it's the worst thing that we have done. You and I have said this for the longest time. It's absolutely reprehensible that we have done this.
Yep.
And we justify it by saying, well, we need to do as much as we can do. Well, it's not we, because we aren't alive yet.
Right.
The people who are going to be burdened by this, a lot of them aren't alive yet.
Right. Now, some people could blame it on you and I. Here's how we're going to make that work. They're going to blame Eric and Gary. Why? Because when you and I started in the summer of 2005 as a team, the national debt was $8.1 trillion. And now look at it. 4.5 times that. Wow. Isn't that crazy? Isn't that crazy? That's insane. That is insane. Wow. 4.5 times that. We were screaming about it then. 8 trillion. Nobody really even knew how many zeros were in a trillion back then. It's just crazy to think about. And now 36 trillion. And, Doge is going to do things.
Well, I'm looking at right now that in 2016, this is what you and I have said. In 2016, the interest was just a little over $200 trillion.
$200 billion.
$200 billion, the interest on the debt.
Right.
And now, as we know, it's supposed to be 1.2 trillion this year.
Right.
1.2 trillion. Wow.
Yeah.
And when you look at it, I think it was 2 trillion when I became a talk show host. 2 point, oh no, I'm sorry. 2.8 trillion in 89 when I became a talk show host.
Yeah.
So now 36, so 10 times greater.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
How we're not as a nation, well, how we let it happen is beyond me. And how everyone isn't screaming. The pathology of dependency, though. Daniel Patrick Moynihan. Go ahead. I dare you to cut. Look, Rick Scott was, when he was running for office, remember? Rick Scott was saying, we're going to get in and we're going to make cuts. And everybody was like, whoa, dude, don't do that. You can't get into that conversation. You're right, but you can't talk that politically right now. If that's going to be your campaign promise, you're going to look like the only guy doing that. Now, Trump, of course, had the bigger pulpit ultimately, but even then, you're seeing things right now. As we've said, they're not going to be able to cut $2 trillion. We'll be the grand marshals of the wrong parade if that were to happen. But it's not going to happen. And it's not going to happen because politically, people won't let it happen. You would have to go through a great deal of pain.
In my mind, I went, well, what the Trump administration is doing is basically debt foreplay.
Worst song by Boston ever.
Because it's a long time.
It's a really long time.
But in order to cut, you have to show the outrageousness of where the spending is going. Yeah. Otherwise, you can't even approach cutting. Yeah. And that's why, in order to cut, they have to say, here's what we're spending this money on. It's waste. It's inefficiency. Now, as we have said, the public believes that if you get rid of foreign aid and waste, you'll balance the budget. Mm-hmm. They're sort of trying to promote the same thing now. It's not going to happen.
Right. Yeah.
And you're going to have to look at other programs that benefit Americans. That's how out of control it is. And that's why it's important to point out, as we did all this week, and thank you, Rand Paul, for verbatim saying what we said. Mm-hmm. Right now, we only pay. Think about everything the government's involved in. Right now, we only pay for Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and food stamps. Mm-hmm. Everything else the federal government does, everything else is borrowed.
Yeah.
From future generations.
Right. Yep.
866-90 Red Eye.
Brought to you by Hot Shot Secret.
Hi, I'm Jen Loomis, a transport safety expert at J.J. Keller, and I'm here to share a tip on roadside inspections. Drivers must always be prepared for a roadside inspection. This means drivers should always have their personal, vehicle, and company credentials organized and ready, and having any shipment paperwork such as bills of lading or hazardous materials shipment emergency response information organized and ready for the inspection official. Just an FYI, the top 2 violations written against drivers every year, as well as during Operation Road Check, are log general form and manner and log not current. Both are completely avoidable if the driver keeps the log accurate, compliant, and current at all times. Having the vehicle ready for inspection involves the driver conducting daily inspections and making sure any problems that are discovered are immediately corrected. Vehicle readiness also requires the company to make sure that the vehicle is current on all scheduled maintenance and that the maintenance schedule is adequate. This will make sure the driver is being given a sound vehicle to start with. This tip was brought to you by JJ Keller & Associates. Visit us at jjkeller.com.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Thanks so much for being here. I just see Stephen King. I just saw it. I'm back on X. Now everybody's coming back. I'm back.
Yeah.
Back.
Mm-hmm.
Just wanted to say Trump is a traitorous, Putin-loving, blankety blank.
Right.
Goes double for Elon. So
right.
Stephen King is back.
Okay. He says it as if people missed him. Yeah. All right. It's like that friend. Okay, I'm quitting Facebook for real this time. I'm not coming back. The next morning. Oh, that was a good breakfast. Look what I had for breakfast.
Well, I love the fact that they're coming back, and I love the fact that, you know, that when you had yesterday, Duffy out in California, and people are booing. They're booing that you wish to cut waste and inefficiency from the government.
Yeah.
I'll have to find the audio from, I think it's Mark Halpern's podcast, where they're like going, my God, can you believe this? This is such a bad move. And there's been a number of Democrats saying this, they can't win this. Why are they doing this?
Right.
It just makes no sense at all.
Yeah. Yeah, it's, it's, I don't know. Everything is so entertaining. I gotta repeat what you said earlier. You know, who needs movies or anything else? I love, and our producer Alan knows this, I love the true crime documentaries on Netflix. Those are fascinating. I'm right in the middle of the one about the Menendez brothers, and they're kind of a part of it, you know, calling in from the jailhouse, of course. But it's so much more entertaining just to get up especially right now, and watch the news. Just watch everything that's going on.
Catch all 5 hours of the show live every night on the Red Eye Radio app. Available in the App Store. Red Eye Radio.
And he is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Thanks for being here. Let's go to Mark in Nashville, Tennessee. Mark, welcome. You're on Red Eye Radio. Hi.
Hi. I listened to the guys saying that even if DOJ makes cuts and savings and finds wasteful spending, that we can't fix the debt anyway. So I was wondering how much gold is on hand in the gold reserve that the United States has in their stockpile, and that the government has a price on it right now is at $42 an ounce. If they would adjust that to the market price or even inflate it by whatever they set it at, and then use some of that gold to pay off these countries that you've borrowed from, that eliminate the debt. Is that a way to fix it, or do we have to go into a Great Depression and start from zero again and then just nullify everybody's?
As of Tuesday, and this would be market value, not the value that the government puts on it. Market value is what you'd be looking at. I believe that would be what most people would want to say if you're going to
2,700.
Right. If you're going to, I don't have it here at the moment, but I do know that according to Forbes, as of Tuesday, I mean, did I keep the article here? $2,940 per troy ounce on the open market on Tuesday.
$29.38 at the moment.
Okay, $29.38. So roughly in Fort Knox has about 59% of the gold. That would be then $434 billion. If you take the rest of the 41%, you have anywhere between $700 and $800 billion worth of gold that the government owns that wouldn't even pay the interest on the debt for 1 year.
Yeah. So what's the answer then? There's never no answer that we are indebting our future generations and then there's no fix to it ever?
Well, no, the answer is...
I think we've been very clear on what the answer is.
The answer is, as I've said, look, all we're saying is you're not going to cut $2 trillion with Doge, but you eventually have to cut that money. You eventually have to balance the budget. And you without question, otherwise, now, if you can slow it down, you can last longer, but you need Doge. Doge is so gutsy for this president to do. As I've said, it's one of the greatest things domestically that a president has ever done in modern times. Because you've got to go to the American people. You just can't say we're going to cut. You've first got to show them all the stupid things that we spend the money on, where it's wasted, where the inefficiencies are. You've got to do that before you can ever start cutting. But even after you do Doge, whatever they come out with the amount, you've got to have Congress say, okay, let's say, for example, Doge comes out and says we can save $2 trillion. You'd still need Congress to do it.
But you still got 34 trillion in debt to these other countries that you owe money to. How are you ever going to pay that?
Well, we don't owe the majority of money is to individuals. You don't owe countries the money. You owe individuals who buy it.
Still, you're paying interest on that debt.
Oh yeah,
that you're never going to be able to get
right.
That's our whole point.
Right, that's the point I've been making.
I'm asking is how that's ever going to get paid.
Well,
I don't know.
Number one, again, like Gary said, the first step is to change hearts and minds when it comes to spending. Part of what Doge is doing is bringing up all these massive, ridiculous things that we're spending money on, and we can start there. Then we have to get our house in order. It goes even further because right now you really can't afford to do anything but keep borrowing money, and that can't last because at some point we won't be able to stay on top of the interest on the debt each year. And when that happens, everything collapses. There's no way around it.
Right. Then you'd be forced. You would have to. You would have to get to the point of just saying 30% across the board cut. You have no choice. Whatever happens, happens.
Yeah. Certain programs would just go away.
And the burden of so many things. And this is why. When you talk about federalism, that's why the states are supposed to do most of the stuff. The federal government was never intended to do all the things that they're doing. That was supposed to be the state that does it, and the state is able to keep much better finances because, they can do bonds, but they can't borrow the way the federal government does.
Yeah, the states need to do a lot better on their infrastructure. They surely can't. They waste money as much as the federal government. They can't fix their roads fast enough. We got roads down here in Tennessee that are from last year's ice damage and not even been fixed yet.
Yeah.
Well, that's the point, and we played earlier JD Vance talking about the fact that here, and thanks so much for your call.
Yeah, thanks, Mark.
That and Rand Paul saying the same thing. Well, we can do both. Well, we can't do both.
No.
We can't do it.
No.
And by the way, just so you know, to our last caller, you felt the result of the debt.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Over the last 3 years, you felt it.
Mm-hmm.
Americans have finally been impacted by it. And by the way, this is again something that the administration needs to pound on over and over again. I think there's 2 points that, not that they don't ever bring them up, but they need to pound them consistently. Stephen Miller, get out there and follow this. Rand Paul, get out here and follow this. The immorality of what's going on, how evil it is that we do this. Because it is.
It is.
It's absolutely evil that we do this as a country. And the other point is point out the fact that the federal government was never set up to do all these different things. And we cannot be borrowing. And these things have to go back to the state. What did they say they wanted to go back to the state? And who was the one who said that Mississippi or Louisiana couldn't handle it? What was that about a couple weeks ago?
Oh, what was that?
Oh, who said that? I can't remember.
Yeah.
Who said,
Yeah, that they could never do that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you're education.
Oh, yeah.
Which is like, well, it's and now it's like, we'll get rid of the education department, let states run it, and we'll give them grants.
Right.
We can cut the full bureaucracy out of the federal government, and if they still need grants, we'll give grants. But why? Because what makes it more efficient? I'll tell you one thing: the teachers' unions, Randy Weingartner. I mean, she's just a nutcase. And I forgot who made the point the other day, saying you're talking about an organization that, and COVID proved it. They don't give a damn about the children. They are as radical left as you can possibly be. They don't care about the United States. They don't care about education. The teachers may. We're talking the union. And if you want the evidence, you want the proof, COVID proved it.
Yep.
And so you're going to need to have competition in education.
Yeah.
You're going to have to do it. And even
because what is the goal? The goal is for children to learn. And what is pouring more and more federal government money into it done for us over the years? Anything? It hasn't changed anything.
No, it hasn't.
At all. It's created a greater nanny state in that we're providing more meals than ever. But if this is a food program, then call it a food program and let's end it.
Oh, I should have saved it. There was a Democrat that put out there on X. We can't cut the education department. We're last in education on this. We're last on education on this. We're last on education on this. We're last on education on this. We can't cut the education department.
He just pointed out.
Yeah, it was like, you just made the point
you don't
to get
understand.
rid of the education department.
Yes. This is what it gets you. Last place.
And it wasn't last place. But
no.
I mean, it's, but it was.
No, but by their own argument.
Right.
Okay, great. It's not working. Thank you for reaffirming that. Because it isn't working.
Yeah, so when you look at the amount of gold that we have, and by the way, that's why you can't base the dollar on gold.
Right.
We got $700 to $800 billion in gold.
Right.
And and it wouldn't matter anyway. I mean, that's the dumbest.
The part of the premise is that it couldn't be manipulated. Well, of course it could. You could have other nations hoarding gold. You could have a number of things that would affect it.
But you can't manipulate the strength of the U.S. economy.
Right.
Either. What's easier to manipulate? The cost of gold or an American economy?
Right.
And, and it wouldn't matter anyway. I mean, it's such a stupid argument.
Well, because what was the ultimate argument behind it? It was, well, because if everything goes to pot, then we're going to have to, and we don't mean marijuana, then we're going to have gold. You have something tangible. Well, actually, then we should have it on the water standard.
Right.
Everywhere except California.
Water and food standard.
Yeah, exactly.
Should be what we should be on.
Right.
If you're talking about
and batteries.
And how do we know this?
Book of Eli.
Exactly, the movie Book of Eli.
The documentary
Batteries,
Book of Eli. Yeah.
Batteries, personal wipes.
And memory. And your memory.
And your memory, yes. Your memory's very important.
Yes.
Now, people that haven't seen Book of Eli have no idea what we're talking
been too
about.
long. Sorry, spoiler alert.
Nah, spoiler alert. That's okay. That you can still say that, and they still wouldn't get it till the
I'm
end.
going to give you a Book of Eli spoiler right here. So, you can pause it or whatever, but here's the Book of Eli spoiler. Bruce Willis was dead for the entire movie.
But that's why the whole gold standard, it wouldn't matter if the United States went on the gold standard. It doesn't matter if we decide to go on the gold standard. We don't judge our currency.
Right.
The International Currency Exchange does on the free market.
Right.
And that would still be in existence. We're still going to be judged by what the relationship is between our currency and other currencies, and that's based on the strength of your economy and your government debt and everything else involved in it. All that has a part to do with the strength of the dollar. So it's a dumb argument. But thanks for calling, because I know a lot of people, because that's a great point. Well, how much gold do we have? Can we pay off the debt? No, we can't pay off the debt with all the gold that we have.
And we share your concerns. You know, when you ask, well, then how do we get on top of it? It's something, again, this is what is so confounding and maddening about this, is that we let it get this far. You know, we're with you in the frustration. How in the world do you get on top of it? Well, with a growing interest on the debt, because the principal keeps growing, it means at some point we will reach a point where we cannot service the interest alone, just the interest on the debt. That right there will be the tipping point. And there won't be, it won't be a matter of choices. It will be cuts across the board. As you mentioned, it will start with massive cuts, and a number of people, I don't know anybody that won't be affected, in fact, because it'll cause a massive recession.
I'm actually, the frustration of the last caller, I really, really appreciate.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's how I've been feeling since 1989.
Right. No, all of them are very important questions,
right.
and you want to throw every idea possible at, well, there's got to be. You're right, there should be, but there should have been a practical answer to begin with, and that is you can only afford what you can pay for.
I appreciate the call and the correspondence we've been getting, especially the last couple of weeks as we talk about it since Doge has come in. People saying, we got to get this under control.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Before the inflation happened, as recently as a year and a half ago, our own callers would tell us the debt's not a problem.
Right.
That you guys are making a mountain out of a molehill.
Right.
I've been told that for the past almost 36 years now.
Yeah.
Yeah. And from
right.
people that call themselves Republicans and conservatives, it's not really a problem.
Right.
All of a sudden inflation hit, all of a sudden it's a problem. All of a sudden
right.
Doge starts exposing it about the things that we, spend, that we waste our money on, and people are saying, well, this is ridiculous. This information's been out there. We knew the money was wasted long time ago. I'm glad Elon Musk is doing it. As I say, it's one of the most gutsy things that Trump is doing, because it's really not the Republican Party doing it. It's Trump.
Yeah.
Doge came from Trump.
Right.
Republican Party didn't sit there and say.
The GOP didn't put this together.
No, they didn't do this.
Right.
Now, the fact is, he's not going to serve another term, so he can do it if it ends up not being popular, which is the chance you take whenever you say, we've got to cut.
Right, yeah.
866-98 Red Eye.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90 Red Eye.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Download our Red Eye Radio app today. Hey, when our show ends, which is another hour from now.
Not forever, just for the day.
Just for the day, yes.
Yeah, to be clear.
When our show ends for the day, which will be another hour from now, is when our podcast starts. We record our show, and it becomes our podcast. So if you don't work nights anymore or whatever, you just can only catch part of the show and wish to catch the entire thing, you can do so during the day or anytime on our Red Eye Radio app. And if you can't listen to one of our great radio stations while we're on the air live, we also stream all 5 hours live on our Red Eye Radio app.
Yeah, get it. It's absolutely free. But if you act now, it's also free.
Coming up on the top of the hour, George Clooney admits the media dropped the ball.
No. All right.
So did you, George.
Yeah, right.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One.